Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land your job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hey guys, this is Virginia Franco. I am so excited to have with me today Pharma, Biotech, and medical sales coach, as well as podcast host Michael Hayes. After spending a few decades in pharma sales that included roles with GSK, Johnson & Johnson, Novartis, and Merck, Mike was eager to focus more on training and coaching in addition to his sales. Coincidentally and concurrently, his 3 adult children were at the time trying to navigate the college application and job search process. And after helping them, he began to lend his support to more college grads as well as millennials. This led to the launch of his coaching practice and his podcast, where he shows job seekers how to get hired in medical sales. So thank you so much for joining me and returning the favor. I know I was on your podcast a little bit ago, but I'm really excited to have you on because I do have a lot of clients in the pharma, biotech, and medical sales space.
Well, Virginia, thanks for a bunch. I'm really excited. This is, like you said, in addition to my sales background, which I'm very passionate about and love sales, I found that trying to coach people to get hired and navigate through the challenging job search process, there's a huge element of sales. I know a lot of people can get maybe a little nervous when you say that. They don't want to be too salesy. But you and I both know once you finally get an opportunity to get in front of a hiring manager, you want to be able to tell your story, make it be compelling, sell yourself, and eventually try to close out the interview. And so I'm passionate about that because I found it's helped me and other people in this process.
I agree. And I actually, and tell me if you disagree, I feel like people with a sales background are actually at a little bit of an advantage when it comes to job search because a lot of the process is very similar to what sales folks go through in terms of building out a pipeline, coming up with their marketing collateral, they're doing their sales pitch. It's just that this time the product isn't, it's not a device, it's not a pharmaceutical, it's themselves.
Right. And think about a lot of your clients have tremendous college degrees and resumes where they have excellent work experience. And, they've been on this, say, search or this vision for having this wonderful career. Then they get right into the trenches. And a lot of it comes back to, like you're saying, kind of those basic, blocking and tackling. I mean, if I'm trying to really help somebody and you boil it down, I'm sure you've done this, it kind of comes down to, I ask some accountability questions. Like if it was my son or daughter, I would just ask, well, how many people have you actually spoken with today, or this week? Not I filled out hundreds of applications online.
Right.
That's good busy work.
Busy work, yeah.
Yeah. Psychologically, we feel great about that. But you and I kind of both know there's some basic steps. You have to talk to actual people to get that interview. Then in that interview, you've got to be able to tell your story and sell yourself. And a lot of that comes back, like you say, to sales in the fact that when I try to encourage people, yes, I know you have this advanced degree and this wonderful GPA and awesome college experience and all that. But if you cannot get in front of a hiring manager and tell your story and overcome obstacles and challenges they're going to throw at you, then unfortunately in this highly competitive job market, you're, like you say, you're in a disadvantage if you can't do that.
That's right. Well, I think you alluded to some of the points that I think might inform your answer to this next question. What do you see as a few challenges that are facing your clients today as they begin to test the job search water in this medical sales industry?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think what happens is people get discouraged too quickly and they give up on the basics that actually work. So like we say, if you let's I like to say, let's reverse engineer it. If we're going to actually get hired, we need to get a job offer. To get a job offer, we have to get through an interview process and answer all the objections and sell ourselves. But to get an interview, we have to do the networking effectively so that leads to interviews. And then back up one more step. If you're going to effectively network, you have to be confident about your story, about, why someone should hire you, and being genuine and being yourself, because all that gives you that swagger to kind of, once you've reverse engineer it, to keep pushing yourself through the process. Unfortunately, most people stop. Like I say, they fill out 100 job applications because we're taught that in college, right? That's just smart, right? Just crank out the apps.
Yeah, but it's volume.
Yeah. You've got the perfect resume. Then what happens is people give up. They fall short. 3 months into it, no one's hiring, quote unquote, or, they're not responding to my interview, my resume. And so I think the biggest, to answer your question specifically, would be is come up with a plan and get some input from somebody, a coach, a mentor. Make sure that your plan makes sense, like how you're going to tackle the job market. Come up with some measurables, and then a calendar and a strategy, and just stick with it. But the key is also get better, right? Because even with this coronavirus that we're under, it changes, as you and I know, it changes all the time.
Yeah.
And even now, more rapidly. For example, you might be doing more video interviews. And the things you used to do to network, maybe meet people in public, you're not going to do that now. So how can you use LinkedIn and be real, again, not too salesy, but not too timid.
Yeah, but you're right. Your strategy needs some flexibility given that things are changing rapidly.
Yeah. I think, just to answer your question, helping whoever you're trying to help find a job, say, okay, let's come up with a plan. Let's go after it. Now let's get better. Let's be flexible. Let's improve, but let's not back off the basic things that work once we hit a roadblock or get discouraged. In other words, there's a process and it works if we stick with it.
I agree. And back to the earlier discussion around just sales in general, the process is not of reverse engineering, target companies and then target people and then figure out who that can introduce you to those people and coming up with ways to reach out to the people that you want to get to know. That is very similar to me in sales to identifying who the physicians might be or the gatekeepers might be at healthcare institutions, and then figuring out who can get you into the door to get those discussions going. But you're right, you're breaking it down into little pieces and you're coming up with alternatives, given that you can't call someone up and say, let's meet for coffee. That's not working as well anymore. What else can I do?
Exactly.
Is there something that has, that your clients are surprised by when they are, in these initial stages of job search?
Well, the biggest thing in our industry, in medical and pharmaceutical sales, which is really different and people have to embrace this coming in. And this is great though, because it applies to across the board to your whole audience.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to strap on your helmet, so to speak, and get ready for a rough and tough interview in medical sales. And what I mean by that is you really have to sell yourself. They expect that. Because think about it. These are $100,000 jobs, okay? They want good people because they're going to pour, I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars of training and development into the person they get.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're going to be handling medicines and medical products that impact people's lives. And there's a medical legal component of it too in the medical industry. So I can't stress enough with people, when people are surprised by this, that ultimately they want good people. They don't really want that perfect pedigree, back to that perfect resume. But don't be surprised, though, to your point, in the interview process, it's very rigorous. And I hear it all the time from people. Well, let's say I applied for a regular B2B or business-to-business sales job, and I showed up. I had my degree. I worked someplace else. That was good. They gave me a shot. Well, it's not like that in these $100,000 medical sales jobs because all the reasons I mentioned. So the difference is you have to really prepare for a rigorous interview process and understand it's almost like a game going in. And I would say the same for all of your clients who are trying to find jobs. There's just some preparing for a very rigorous interview.
I agree. I'd also say that same level of rigor exists with the big ticket high tech sales, the technology sales, and interviews within highly regulated industries like banking, healthcare is obviously certainly regulated, but when there's a lot on the line, if you break the slightest of rules.
Exactly.
No,
and it makes sense, right? They're going to invest either, like you said, tech, finance, a lot of these companies.
They're high risk.
They're wonderful products. The companies have spent billions to invent these products or bring them to market. So the great news is if you and I land that job, we're going to have an awesome job with a nice pay and opportunity for advancement and a lot of resources behind us. But to get that job, we just can't slide into it. We have to really show up and be prepared. And that's where I help people. I have a new book I'm working on.
What's it called?
It's called 3 Steps to Get Hired in Medical Sales. And one of those big steps is I break down the interviewing process into 4 stages to really just coach people and prepare them when they go into these interviews to really be prepared.
Nice. So this is a good segue. So we know what you want people to do, show up and prepare accordingly. Is there something that drives you most nuts when it comes to, job seeker or some of your client mishaps? Are there common mistakes that just, you really frustrate you that you see as easily fixable, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think kind of alluded to earlier, that theme of just kind of giving up before you get to the finish line. Right? You do a few things at work and get interviews, and then all of a sudden you don't get the job, and then people kind of scratch their head and think, well, maybe this isn't for me, or they want to go a different direction. No, wait a minute, let's slow down. You got the interview, okay? So 100 other people didn't get the interview.
Right. And that tells you that at least your resume is probably working and your LinkedIn is probably working. It helps you figure out where things go wrong if you get the interview, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, you're in the interview, you're in a little bit of a battle there. And so you got your feelings hurt, you got your ego bruised, and you didn't get the offer. Well, first, realize, like you said, you've made it this far. Now you're competing with at least 3 to 10 other highly, competent people. And so now learn from that and get better. Don't feel like, it's not ever going to work or you're not qualified. I tell people all the time, if there's 3 to 5 candidates there and the job description said, they need so many years experience and you're getting started in this process, it's likely that one of those other candidates got that particular job and they were more qualified. And so the great news is it just means you're a step or 2 away. Don't pack up and go home. It just means, okay, so in other words, let's play those numbers out. So in that particular spot, somebody else got it. But that means if I keep going through the process, it's very likely I could be one of those people if I just keep growing and moving down the continuum.
That's a really good point. I've always viewed job search as sort of it's a pipeline. You've got the beginning stage is, figuring out your job target, the companies, and you need to have your career marketing collateral together. Then you need to make sure that your interviewing skills are really good. And then your closing skills are really good. And I do see people giving up early on where they have, maybe gone on 3 interviews and they're like, oh, my resume sucks. I'm going to quit. I'm like, well, you got to the interview, so it's not your resume, or I'm not getting any interviews. Well, maybe it's how you're targeting companies, or maybe that, you can sort of examine the pipeline to help you. You don't have to overhaul the whole thing. You can really fix the one piece that needs tweaking.
Yes. And Virginia, here's why I get really excited as somebody demonstrates that right in front of the hiring manager, they're actually showing them they have the skills to do the job.
Right.
What better stage to say, hey, I can do this. Now show up and do it in the interview. Think on your feet, be flexible, be creative, tell your story, overcome objections, have good follow-up. All those things that in these jobs, principles are pretty similar. This is a lot of sales, but like you said, it could be tech or it could be, financial services. Same thing, right? They want you to demonstrate in that interview that you kind of know what you're doing. Don't just say it. And that's where you can't just read a book or watch a YouTube video or even listen to podcasts, right? They're all great. I have one. But that's why I encourage people to do the numbers, go through the process and put yourself out there, but step back and learn from it and get better. Then there's nothing that could hold you back.
No, that's great advice.
Can I share one story?
Yeah, please.
When I first broke into pharmaceutical sales, I had moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, and I actually was fired from my current job. I only had this little job for a few weeks in industrial sales. It didn't work out. I had a new baby. Now I was unemployed, and I was really, really drawn to medical and pharmaceutical sales, but I knew really nothing about it. And I had no chemistry or biology background. I could just see the upward mobility in medical and pharma versus the older smokestack, industrial sales industry that I was a part of. So just everything I'm telling you, just the funnel, just getting the interviews and showing up. But in the final interviews, the third interview, and the hiring manager looked at me and he said, Mike, look, I've got 3 candidates. The other 2, one is with a competitor. So they have all the,
they know the products. Yeah.
Yeah. All the industry experience. The other one works in one of the hospitals. She's a nurse. So he looked at me. Now you're unemployed. I don't know much about you. And you're applying. Why should I hire you? So okay, here's what I just came out of my mouth. They said, well, hey, the problem with that competitor, you might have to untrain them some bad habits. And then with the nurse, she's really good with technology, but she might talk too much and never ask for the order. But I said, in my case, I'm unemployed. I have a wife and a baby. I have sales experience. I'm just looking for the opportunity. I will do a great job.
So you really knew you were prepared to overcome objections.
Yeah. So that's why I try to teach people is, be secure enough in in my 4 stages to crushing an interview. Is one of them is this ping pong back and forth in answering questions and overcoming objections where you're secure enough as to one of the keys in interviews, especially in medical sales, is the ability to think on your feet. So they call that, another way to look at that, if you do the research, it's emotional intelligence, is the ability to think on your feet and process things in real time and not have a blind spot to what's going on. So that only comes with practice. We can talk about that all day. So in that moment, I'd already been interviewed and turned away in so many jobs I didn't get. So in that moment, I knew they were going to push my buttons. I knew, as I tell people, there was no knockouts in my story. I wouldn't be invited back to a third interview. So they weren't concerned about my resume. They weren't concerned about my qualifications, but I needed to show up and sell myself. That's why I try to encourage people to do that.
I like that. So you were able to successfully transition into this. What advice do you have today for someone to be able to get on someone's radar when they're trying to make that career move into pharma sales?
Sure. Well, the most important thing, it's so basic. We basically buy or hire from people we like.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a lot of information out there today. We can learn to be likable. So to your point, what I would do is immediately figure out, where those people are who are in that role that I want. How do I connect with them and basically become friends at some level? I don't mean dear long lost friends, but I can make that connection on LinkedIn. And this doesn't work for everybody, but I talk people through kind of the numbers of how to go about this. That if you basically reach out to 10 people, 3 or 4 people will never get back to you.
That's right.
Busy. Yeah. 3 or 4 people might respond, but 1 or 2 will follow up with you. And now you've got a new connection, and the others might happen later. So to answer your question, as you do everything else you and I have been talking about, applying online, preparing your resume, it's really those connections, those individuals, friendships you make, because it's so powerful today. When there's an opening for a job, the hiring manager most likely will reach out to his current employees and ask them if they know anybody.
That's right.
Or vice versa. Someone reaches out to the manager and says, hey, I have a friend. You should talk to him. you and I both know, and this is why we can't stress this enough, that is so golden.
Yeah, having that champion on the inside is
yes, and
is
the beauty
gold.
today with technology, the beauty today with LinkedIn and texting and email and however you want to do it, your cell phone, there's so many tools available. And if you do it right to cultivate that friendship, but again, here's the challenge: our little mind, because we were taught in school, apply online. So we get immediate feedback, we think, by applying online. It's much more risky or difficult to put your heart on your sleeve and reach out to 10 strangers on LinkedIn and then wait for a week for them to get back to you and then follow up and, ask them for their help. Now, I've got some tricks to help to make that a lot easier, but most of us, it just seems like that's a longer, drawn out process and more risky. But if I jump online and apply to 10 jobs, I'll get one quicker. And it works the opposite.
No, it doesn't. When you apply online, the person with the most keywords wins. And if you haven't been in that industry, you're just not going to have as many keywords, period.
Yeah.
You don't have that experience.
So can I ask you a question? Let me ask you a question. Yeah. So let me, how would you help me with people who get kind of stuck there? Like, they kind of know what you and I are talking about. They know it's who you know, but they're still stuck in that old way of thinking.
Apply.
Yeah. When you chat with them, how's it going? Oh, I applied for 100 jobs today and haven't heard back, so I guess no one's hiring.
Well, I'm like you. It's reverse engineering the process. If you are set on working at a pharma company, then you need to come up with 10 companies that you think you would be a good fit for, and then say, okay, I need to come up with 10 people. Each of those companies are in those roles, and see if you don't know someone who knows somebody. Or I have a couple scripts as well to reach out to people you don't know. Recognizing that when you apply to when you email 10 people, you're lucky to really be able to latch into one or two people and get those conversations going. Find out about how they made the move, who else they might recommend you reach out to. And each of those conversations can then lead to other relationships. But I guess my question for you is: do you feel like some of the big companies like a J&J on the pharma side, or a Medtronics on the device side, do you think that for a newbie trying to break in, do you say go for it with those top tier companies, or do you think it's an easier transition to try to get in and maybe a smaller company or a startup to try to get some experience first, with the idea that maybe in a year or two you might then pivot to the bigger company?
Wow, that's an excellent question. And here's why I love that question. It depends on the opportunity and the person. So you can't give a black and white answer. Here's why. Here's why. If you get into the top tier company, wow, honestly, you are set for life.
Yeah, it's hard though.
It's hard, but I'm saying that once you get the name J&J or Novartis or Merck or Eli Lilly on your resume, you're pretty much set for life.
Yeah, you're right. And people are going to type in competitor names when they're searching for talent. You're right. Those big names really do matter.
Yeah. Now here's the thing though. So the catch-22 is they can get the best people. So for a lot of us, we might not be able to find that job at the right time. Mm-hmm. So the, say, second tier, I don't know if I want to use that word, but say a lesser known entity or opportunity comes your way. Because what you desperately need before you get into the big top tier companies is the experience.
That's right.
Right. So how do you get the experience if you can't get hired? But here's the thing: there are amazing opportunities out there in a second tier company that will give that person everything they need, but don't settle or don't sell yourself short. For example, here's what I mean. Some of those second tier companies, let's say, I hate to use that word, but let's just say lesser known, could really be not a great opportunity. For example, they could be commission only, let's say.
That's right.
Or they could be in a niche that you just aren't excited about. Maybe it's home health care, nursing home, or dental.
Right.
And you vision yourself being in the OR doing orthopedic sales.
Right. And it's a job to try to sell gloves or something. It's not nearly as exciting.
Right. On the other hand, though, there are excellent opportunities. For example, my two big breaks came in. I was in ophthalmic pharmaceutical sales, And most people have never heard of that, selling pharmaceuticals to eye doctors. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a niche within pharma that most people don't really think about.
Right. They always think about heart and like the big stuff. Yeah.
Right. Diabetes, obesity. And another excellent job I had, and I try to tell people about this, is laboratory sales. So selling, laboratory tests, diagnostic testing to the hospitals and doctors. And within that is the general test, like we just talked about, like for, CBC, a blood count, which a lot of them do in-house. Then there are the more sophisticated cancer tumor markers and other tests at the oncology. So the neat thing about this space is if you can find one of those opportunities, you can get a huge experience and still be with a great company, but it might not be the most well-known space, or maybe not exactly what you wanted to go into. But the good thing about that, I've talked to other people, you really need to do the job for a while before you really know what you like or don't like. So instead of turning down, I tell people, instead of turning down and getting all your hopes up to get with a J&J or a Medtronic, interview with as many people as you can, try to get to the point where you get an offer, and then evaluate the opportunity. And maybe you step into it and do it for a year or two and see what you like and don't like.
I love that. And you're right, that niche product or disease state might be a great in.
Yes.
Definitely worth considering. Yeah. Be a big fish in a small pond.
Exactly.
No, I love that. So what is your advice? And I'm sure you get people, it's always lovely when you get a client that is just beginning their job search and they come to you before they've done anything. But what about those people that have been job searching and it is not going well? How do you recommend they sort of reboot, reevaluate?
Right. Well, thanks. Great. I think go back to the reverse engineering it. So if we think about a sales funnel, if you're selling widgets and your job is to sell 10 widgets a month, and your goal is to find new prospects, throw them in the top end of that funnel, they'll drop out for some reason. But if you throw 10 in a month, hopefully 1 or 2 will trickle out in time. So I would just sit down with someone and say, okay, somewhere in your process, either it's not working, or you need a little fine tuning, or you need to pump more energy into it. For, like you and I've talked about, are you getting new qualified people in the front of your prospect funnel? What I mean is somebody you can actually speak to in person. I don't mean filling out 10 more applications.
Right.
If you spoke to them in person, is that leading to interviews? Okay, well, not really, they're not hiring, or they directed me back to then you probably didn't talk to enough of the right people that could open up opportunities. And the same thing in the interviewing, did you get, past the first interview, second interview? Okay, no, what happened? Well, that's why I encourage people that, like you and I've talked about. So I like Ken Coleman has a book. He's a podcaster, and she has a show and career coaching. And his book is called The Proximity Principle. It's the same thing. It's a principle. These things work if we put ourselves in proximity where these jobs are taking place. It's highly likely that we'll have more opportunity versus sitting back and filling out applications.
Yeah, right. Getting access to the people that might be in the hiring room or in a position to influencing hiring managers is huge.
Can I tell you another story?
Always, yes.
So I'm with Merck right now, and they're one of the top companies in the industry, as you know. Very hard to get into, but they're really awesome because when they bring a product out, like a lot of these companies, their goal is to be unique in that niche, in that specialty, and Merck has done that. And so they, have a great brands. So earlier in my career, on 2 different times, recruiters called and they were having a hiring event, and I was flown out to Philadelphia at one point, and another time flown over to another city on the East Coast, and they were launching new products, and they were reaching out and bringing people in for interviews. In both those events where I was myself and say 100 other people were there for spots they were filling around the country, I didn't get hired. And I finally kind of got discouraged, and I thought, well, I guess I'll never work for Merck because I've done with everything I could do. Actually, at one time for that interview, I spent like $100 on my brag book and had it professionally bound, and really went just so gung ho for the interview. And so I was kind of down and discouraged.
Sure.
and I thought, okay, I was with Novartis, awesome company. I'll just stay with Novartis. And one day I was doing my job. This is like 2 months later. I was in a parking lot in a medical building. And this fellow reached out, yelled out, just kind of being super friendly, gregarious. Hey, what's going on? And we chatted up and we became great friends. But little did I know he was with Merck and had been promoted. His manager said, before you can move on, you have to find your replacement. So little did I know, I'm striking up this friendship with this random guy, and he needs to replace somebody. This is in a really great job at Merck. And he said, you got to talk to my manager. And I'm like, oh, trust me, I've talked to Merck a couple of times. They're not, no thanks. So third or fourth time, he said, just talk to her. You're going to really like her. She's great. Honestly, I did. So 19 years later, I'm still there. So
isn't that funny? Yeah, you never know when a conversation is going to happen. Yeah.
So to my point, we could get on our helmet and grind it out, or we could have fun with it and say, let's just have fun and try to meet these people who are in these jobs, because they're going to have openings and they want to hire real people. So if I can get beyond the job interview, my resume, and show up and meet these people, it might start with LinkedIn. Or it could be at your kid's soccer game, like me, in a parking lot. I've got other stories just like that. I won't go into them, but I can tell you more. And that's how I found most of my jobs, honestly.
Well, and to your point, people hire people they like and they know. And that relationship, to me, is the fast pass. It's like a Disney World fast pass to get to have your name be top of mind. I love that. But you're right. Sidelines of people's games, plane rides, you never know who knows people.
Yeah.
So what, and I don't know how many people you get this. Do you work with a lot of people that say, well, I could go in a lot of different directions. I could do, this disease state, that disease state. I could do pharma or device or capital equipment. How do you help them, or do you help them to focus? What advice do you have for people like that? They just know they want to get into healthcare. They don't really know what.
Right. Okay. So there's so much to learn about the industry.
Right.
So you have to learn about the industry and you, like, where are you in life? And are you a risk taker? Or do you want to be the quarterback? Are you super competitive? Or are you maybe in a stage in life where a little less risk and a nice big base salary and a company car and benefits would be more of a fit for you, and you could ride along with the team and have a few wins? Or do you need to be the quarterback and be the destiny, have your own destiny in your own hands?
Mm-hmm.
And what I say is, because pharma is a little more base salary and benefits, and you do the work that the company lays out for you to do. And in time, you have little wins and you grow the business and you're rewarded for it. But you say, no, I want to be the quarterback and I want a chance to make $200,000 this year.
Right.
So I want to go into medical sales. I want to be there with that surgeon. And if I get my product in the hospital, then I can have a home run and make $200,000. So that's, that's kind of in a nutshell. It's kind of an easy way to look at it. And that's not, I don't want to oversimplify it, but the great news is today, if you go on medreps.com and do a salary or compensation search, I might have probably, people might disagree with me, but right now, overall compensation is pretty similar between medical and pharmaceutical sales. You're looking at $100,000+ job, $100,000 plus $1,000 job. Once you're into it, I don't want to make it sound like if you show up with no experience, that's going to be first year, but a couple of years into it, you should expect that. So then it kind of depends on, okay, where you are in life and what you're like. For example, I'm a married man with kids, a house and a mortgage, and paying for kids' college. I kind of like that nice base salary and the benefits.
Right.
But let's say somebody else is saying, I'm used to, I want to make more money. I want it uncapped and I'll take some risk. Well, then maybe medical sales, surgical, capital equipment, where you really you can have a chance to make
right, where you get to work in that 100% commission environment. You could make a killing, but you're right, it's bigger risk. Depends on your risk tolerance.
And if you stay in pharma, there's great career paths. Like I decided to be a career rep, but you can go into management. And now the region, our sales managers are local, or they're based out in the field. And there's a home office. You can go into marketing and management and pursue a path in the home office. Now you have to live in that geography. So,
right.
I think if you just, a person will kind of slow down a minute and think about, okay, what are their values? And I help people with this when, I'm coaching them, and first thing I do is let's develop your story, right? Let's figure out like, what are your interests and what are your talents and what passions do you have? And so then that helps define one of those jobs you're talking about. And then the basics to be successful in the job are pretty similar. Then once you kind of define those nuances, then you can kind of start pursuing a career path.
Yeah.
The other real catch to this, you and I both know, it's being prepared when opportunities come your way. So if people are on board with what you and I are talking about and just put themselves out there, then opportunities will come their way. Then it really fires things up because now you have a choice to go. You might want to zig or zag based on the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the idea of understanding your risk tolerance and your deal breakers. I mean, some people absolutely have to have the company pay for their benefits. Or there's travel deal breakers.
Exactly.
So you really need to know where you are in your life and where you can flex on your values and which ones you can't.
Right.
So my next question, I hear it a lot with regards to pharma. Certainly, it's around discrimination when it comes to hiring practices, age, ethnicity, gender. I've heard people say, "Well, pharma sales is a young person's game." What are your thoughts on it? Do you advise people on how best to tackle this, or am I, wrong? It doesn't exist at all. What say you?
Well, there's a couple ways to answer that. Let's do the age thing first.
Okay.
So pharma a while back had kind of a bad reputation.
Mm-hmm.
They only wanted to hire the cheerleaders and the quarterbacks.
Right.
And for good reason. In a highly fluid, competitive, medical office or building with a lot of going back a while,
mm-hmm.
where there was more openness to reps coming in. They felt like, that peppy, beautiful cheerleader or that handsome, studly quarterback would just get more audience with the medical offices. And we know on the surface that makes sense. But the beautiful thing that's changed for say someone like me who's more tenured, but really for all of us who want an opportunity, because the medical legal environment, there's a lot more pressure on these companies to hire good, reliable people. So they're less likely to want that flashy, person who's going to pop in, make a splash, and be gone in a year or two. Because of the money they invest in training and the need for the ethics and the reliability of the people they send out, they really value tenure these days. And again, hiring that good quality person. So, for example, when someone's interviewing or I'm talking to them and the job description says 3 to 5 years medical sales experience, I cannot tell you how many times I've had people on my podcast who got those jobs but didn't have those years of experience, didn't have any experience in medical sales, but they got in front of the person, they built that rapport, and bottom line was they were that good person that needed to be hired. And that's why I stress with people to fight for these jobs, because you have to show up and show them you're that good quality caliber person. Like in my story, I told you that was quite a risk for that manager to hire me. I was unemployed. I had been fired. I had no medical or pharmaceutical sales. But I turned that around and said, hey, I'm kind of desperate. I've got a wife and a baby. I have some sales experience. I'm qualified. I have a college degree. Now give me a shot at it, and I can prove that I'm better than these folks. And at least I could show you where they have weaknesses, where I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm a clean slate. Yeah, bring me on, give me an opportunity. I think if you keep that mindset, then back to our question about, discrimination and all that, it's on these companies and these managers now. They know that they're going to hire this person to be part of their team, and they've got to get the right person because, they're investing a lot in them. And so I think it has changed a lot today.
That's good to know. And so you need to show that you're worth the risk, but also with your, the tenure in this case minimizes their risk, which makes them a more attractive hire. No, I love that.
And so, I tell people, we all have strengths and weaknesses. Learn to flip those around, and you can't change your resume. Like if I'm 29 years old,
you can't change
lie.
Your gender, your ethnicity, your age, right?
Right. But realize in that interview between you and the other people, they have strengths and weaknesses. So we're not bashing the other people, but we're just saying, okay, let me be secure with that. Okay. I have this, I can't change it. Well, so does the other person, by the way. And I know that in the back of my mind. So in the interview, when they throw those curveball questions at me, sit up straight in my chair. I teach people how to prep for these and practice. So, you're ready to roll when they come your way. You're not like a deer in the headlights. And so if you do this practice, you're ready to reach into your bag of tricks and pull out some good answers. And honestly, that's why other way I coach people, a lot of times these interviews, they're putting you on the spot to see how you respond. They don't know. True. They don't have the exact answer to the question themselves. You're the expert on you. So if you answer it confidently and intelligently, the chances are you help that interviewer do their job. And then psychologically, they like you and they want to advance you along to the next step.
That makes total sense. What are, someone comes to you and just has 5 minutes, they have 5 minutes of your time and they say, I'm getting ready to job search. What are, one or two tools that I absolutely have to have before I embark on my job search journey? What say you? What tools do you think they are must-haves?
Yeah. So obviously using whatever books you can read on LinkedIn. Okay. So let's talk about, we all know LinkedIn. We were taught from school, from college, you have to be on LinkedIn. And we think it is like a fancy resume. That's how we were taught 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I think it's the world's greatest CRM.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Today, that's it. And then if we can leverage it for that. And so, any books or guides or training or, you probably have material or any other, on LinkedIn. In fact, let me ask you, do you do a tutorial on LinkedIn?
I do have guides, to help people navigate LinkedIn. I write their profiles, but there are lots of people that is their area of specialty where they coach you on how to use LinkedIn to its fullest, whether it's for job search or whether it's to help grow your business.
Pardon me, but I was grabbing one of those books.
Oh, what book?
Yeah. So, my favorite thing is when we could spend time in Barnes and Noble or your local bookstore. And of course, with all the digital and audiobooks. But so I have a book that has been really helpful. It's called The Power Formula for LinkedIn Success.
Oh, who wrote that?
It's Wayne Britt-Bart.
Oh, he was on my podcast. He's great.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. Awesome. Mm-hmm. I need to reach out to him and probably give him a thanks. But,
he's a LinkedIn trainer, but he helps businesses as well as job seekers.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And specifically, there's a couple practicals that I pass on to people. And it's kind of common sense for once we start doing it. But for those who are not quite getting stuck, he talks about doing a custom connection request.
Yeah.
So when you search somebody out, like if I was looking at you, don't just hit the connect button, but go to those three dots that say like send a personal message.
Personalized, yeah.
Yeah. And then what I do, if I learned this from one of my other podcast guests, is I compliment them and then ask for their advice. So we all get people that want to connect with this, but you can tap into human psychology by complimenting the person genuinely. I don't mean like,
oh yeah,
fake,
well, you show that you've done some homework around the person.
Right. Like I think when I reached out to you initially, you and I talked, I loved that you do the storytelling as part of your tagline. Yeah. Because that's one of my steps in my getting hired. And so just those two words stuck out. So you and I connected on that. So I say compliment somebody genuinely and then ask for their help or advice. And usually that is so powerful because we all love to get a compliment, and then we're all as humans, we basically like to help others.
Yeah.
So right there. And then if you do that enough, you get through to people. So back to your question, the tools, he's got a great book, this particular book. And he's got several chapters on how to use LinkedIn. and highly recommend that. And then I would just say podcast and that are career based because or YouTube, but things are changing so rapidly, or there's little there's tips and tricks you can pick up that might suit your personality and style that you might not. It might not be for everybody, but you might do them and they can really work.
I love that. And Madeline Mann she just had it in her post today. I have to find it. It's a app that you can use to turn books and articles into podcasts, into audio. Oh my gosh, what is it called? Hold on a second.
Excellent. Yeah, let me know.
Like, where has this been my whole life? Hold on. It's called. Here we go. I'm digging on LinkedIn.
I'm writing it down as soon as you.
It is called Podcastle.
Oh.
And it's a browser plugin. It's podcastle.ai. And you can listen to all your articles on 1.5 speed and knock out stuff really quickly.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know, right?
That's awesome.
I'm going to check that. I just learned that today. All right, well.
So I would just say, I just encourage people to read. Read. I don't mean be like college student reading. I just mean there's so many great things between the reading, the podcast, books, audio books. But the point is, it's the information and the motivation and feeling like you're in the know. You're connected. And if that gives you just that little bit of edge, to stay motivated, then hey, it can be super successful.
No, I love that. So you have 2 jobs now. You've got your podcast, you have your practice, you have your day job. What is next for you? You alluded to a book that you're writing, or is it already out? I'd love to hear what we can expect from you this year.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm trying to finish the book. I've got the rough draft to my editor and waiting for her to get back with the final copy. And then from there, hopefully, as I close out my weekly podcast show, which is called Get Hired in Medical Sales. So people can find that on Apple Podcast.
Yep.
Right now, my call to action is to connect on LinkedIn because I feel like that's my biggest gift or strength is to be able to connect with people and have conversations and help them in their situation. But I want to have a bigger or a digital, offer for people can download the book. And then from there, the next step would be I offer coaching now, but also maybe maybe an online coaching program. So, yeah.
That's exciting. So if people want to learn more, the links that I have in your bio, I have your LinkedIn profile, your email, and then the link to your podcast. Are those the best ways for people to get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was really helpful. Certainly for people in the pharma, biotech, and medical sales realms, but so much of the advice you gave really does translate into other industries.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I love what you're doing and the practicals that you're offering people, and so thanks for having me as a guest.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SCIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.